Happy Thursday to you, wherever you may be joining us from around the world. It's afternoon here in Los Angeles and in Nashville, where my special guest is today. Thank you so much for joining us. I want to mention that our special guest today, Vinnie Ciesielski, is recorded on over 6,000 sessions, including 50 Grammy-nominated and 25 Grammy-winning albums. Again, I mentioned he's based out of Nashville, Tennessee, but is recorded all over. He's performed on numerous TV shows, including all of the late-night shows, and he's also recorded for radio, TV, and motion pictures. Some of the many artists he's recorded with include Lyle, Lovett, Travis Tritt, Lynyrd Skynyrd, Paul Simon, Taylor Swift, Demi Lovato, and like I said, many others. He was also featured on our podcast, The Other Side of the Bell. He was on episode 93, which if you are not familiar with, you need to go check out. We're, like I said, almost up to 100 episodes. The Other Side of the Bell is available on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and of course on our website at bobreeves.com. So, without further ado, let me bring on my special guest today, Vinnie Ciesielski. Vinnie, how you doing?
Hey everybody, how you doing? How you doing, John? Well, it's good to see you, man.
As I mentioned leading up to this, man, I've been jumping around the shop all day today. I'm so excited to talk to you again. I have to say, your episode of the podcast, we got such a huge response. And for those of you that haven't listened to it yet, I'm not going to ruin any surprises, but there's so much great advice and just exudes positivity. That I wasn't surprised that we got such a great response. So to get to chat with you again and also have follow-ups from our listeners is so awesome. So thank you for being here.
Yes, my pleasure. I'm excited. I've got an idea, John, for your 100th podcast episode, and nothing could possibly go wrong. I think what you do is you get all 99 guests on one Zoom call with their horns and just kind of let them go and see what happens.
Oh man. Oh man. Yeah, that's okay. I'll try.
I don't think there's enough room on the screen for the giant size heads that we all have to fit on there. First of all, and like not just the picture, but the whole trumpet player thing that goes along with it. You know what I mean? That
Right.
would be hysterical. Although I'd love to be on screen with some of those cats, man. It just even just to be in the same digital space as them would be pretty awesome.
Oh
I'd
man.
like that a lot.
Well, that
Yeah.
gives me an idea. I mean, even if it's not for episode 100, I think it would be fun to do a virtual podcast hang with everyone. So I'll see what I can get to get done here. I do want to mention we have folks checking in already from Canada. We got John checking in from Orangeville, Canada, and Tom from Tasmania, Australia. So we've already covered the globe in the first 30 seconds here of this broadcast. And so before we get
Nice.
going, Vinny, before we get to the first questions, I do want to tell our viewers this is your Q&A. So this is your opportunity to talk to Vinny, ask your questions in the comments, and I'll ask him here live. And let us know, like John and Tom already did, let us know where you're viewing from, because it's so cool to connect with trumpet players from around the world and see who's viewing and, kind of share the love. So first things first, Vinny, I know you've been busy on social media with your new group that you had mentioned in the podcast, Vinny and the Hitmen. Can you talk to us about what you're doing with that? First of all, what the group is and what your goals are with the group and how it's going.
Absolutely. And one of the things I would love to address, because, you guys, John, you and the Bob Reeves crew are really good. I love seeing your updates because even if it's a picture of the back of two of your heads diligently working on valve alignments down in San Diego, that was my favorite picture. It's like, oh, you got our best side. That's good. That's
Right?
good. No cameras were harmed in the making of this picture. The social media thing is interesting to me. If you come by my personal page or Trumpet Vinny over on Facebook or Instagram or Vinny and the Hitman, or I have another one called Go Be Awesome 1, which is about fitness and health issues as it relates to creating and making music. And that's a really cool and a passion of mine also. But one of the things that they talk about a lot of times, like if you come to my personal page, you're going to see pictures of my beautiful wife, occasional sunset, and my big, dumb 125-pound Rottweiler dogs, and my little beanie, that's what you're going to see. No politics, no religion, no, I just don't, and I don't tolerate negativity. So if you're negative, you're just not invited back. The Trumpet Vinny thing, I invited a bunch of my friends to come over and follow along on my journey as Trumpet, as my handle, Trumpet Vinny. And I'd like to thank my friend Tyler Summers and Brienne Farquhar for coming up with that handle, because I never would have done that in a million years, but it's worked out really well. So basically, if you go by that page, all you're going to see is dumb stuff about me playing trumpet. But that's kind of what you sign up for. You know what I mean? In those situations.
Right.
We've all seen the thing where, somebody is face bragging. You ever heard of face bragging? They're talking about their accomplishments and they're this and that and the other thing. Hey, you're on the music page. What are we going to talk about? The proper way to hand draw a quarter note. No, we're not. We're going to talk about the cool stuff that we've been doing. So, with regard to Vinny and the Hitman, man, I have not. I think John, you and I talked about this last time. I always consider myself a terrible band leader. Terrible. Some people are cut out to be a band leader. There's so much involved. Like we're putting together a rehearsal. There's 15 people in the band. We're putting together a rehearsal, and it's like, hey, what about November? Bang, 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 3 dates. And so people start responding immediately, which is hugely unusual. Usually it's like you're having to bug 2 or 3 of the guys or girls to respond back. So it was the 1st, the 8th, and the 15th. So 3 people right away come in. I'm free for all of them. Yes. It's Monday night. We're going to do it at the Union here in Nashville, the AFM 257 rehearsal hall, which is a nice little space for us. And then the next 3 come in, and it's the 1st and the 15th. And then the other ones come in, it's the 8th and the 15th. And then one is the 15th only. And so it's like, man, if I had any hair, it's probably why I'm bald. Because I used to be a band leader, and I just yanked all my hair out. So, but this band is really cool. I can't credit myself with the name either. That's Tyler Yeager, my boy, young lion here in Nashville, fantastic player, man. I mean, this kid, I'm hoping that he's going to do what I do after I'm done doing it. I hope he waits until after I'm done doing it. But I've been looking for that guy. He and another kid, Rob Qualick, they're both in the band. So he came up with Vinnie and the Hitmen. It's 3 trumpets, 3 trombones, and 3 saxophones, and a big rhythm section, 2 pianos or 2 keyboardists, drums, bass, guitar. And a good friend of mine named Edward Freitag, who's an incredible educator, wrote one of the just a industry-changing book years back called The Rudimental Cookbook. Doesn't mean anything to trumpet players, but they have made this a regular part of like hundreds of colleges and universities, curriculum. Like you have to buy this book when you're a freshman. And so he's going to play percussion. We've all been playing together for years. It's half of the old guys, half of the OGs, and half of the young guys. As a matter of fact, at one point, we're going to split the band into anybody over 45 and anybody under 45. And we're going to play, the old guys are going to play a tune, and then the young guys are going to play a tune. I don't think the old guys will have a drummer, a bass player, or a guitar player. So we're going to have to be pretty creative with that stuff. But all the trumpet players played various styles, but everybody would be considered in any situation a great lead trumpet player. So that gives me great relief because I will not have to do all of the heavy lifting. And one of the gifts of being a band leader is assigning the parts to the young guys that are not smart enough not to take them. So Rob Qualick and Tyler Yeager, look out! You guys are in trouble. I put a photograph of the song I've been working on. It's a cover of a Justin Timberlake song called "Can't Stop the Feeling." It's a real feel-good feeling. It's from the movie Trolls. Mm-hmm. And it's a real cool melody, and it's really, man, the band just sounds great. And I loaded it into Logic, and I recorded the melody for the saxophones and the answer lines for the trombones, and then there's actually a horn section part. So all 9 people, lots of moving part. So basically, what we're going to do is we're going to do what Maynard did. We're going to do what Doc Severinsen did. We're going to do what a lot of preeminent jazz trumpet players from the 50s and 60s and 70s did. And, Maynard from mid-70s, or maybe even earlier, until the end of his career, did pop covers.
Yeah.
And those were by far his broadest reaching songs. Mm-hmm. I mean, Rocky, it's not really a jazz tune if you think about it. You know what I mean? Yeah. It was a disco tune almost, really. Yeah. And that's when they really started to make again, broad-based. Everybody knew who Maynard was. Everybody knew who Doc was. But they really opened up their demographic a lot when they did "Don't Let the Sun Go Down on Me" and and things from Broadway and just all those different tunes that we all love so much. So this band, which is really kind of a cut down big band, will not play any jazz at all. No jazz. We're going to do short solos, so 8 or 16 bars, and we're going to cover pop. Current pop, R&B, and rock and roll. Awesome. We're doing an incredible arrangement of the Bohemian Rhapsody done by my friend Joe Murphy for a band years ago called the Loudhorns. That was 2 trumpets, French horn, 2 trombones, and rhythm section with a tuba. And it's a magnificent, really, it's a showstopper. It's absolutely a showstopper. So the Justin Bieber thing, we're doing a tune called, John, if you know this tune, I will fall out of this chair.
Uh-oh.
It's called Dynamite. It's called Dynamite by a band called BTS.
Oh, yeah. Are you kidding?
Get out of here. You do not. Do you really?
I love that tune. Yeah, it's a great... I have young kids, and like my son. Oh, my son won't admit that he's into BTS. He says all of his friends are, but he doesn't like it. But no, I've listened to some BTS.
He just stands there. He stands there and listens while they're listening, just to be polite.
Yeah, but he doesn't enjoy it. But I'll confess on a live stream that it's fun stuff. I'm like, it's feel good music. You put it on and you feel like moving, and
And that's what we want to do. So my wife, Beth, who we talked about on the podcast, who is just the light of my life, the best person I know on the face of the planet. She's just wonderful. We're really a matched set. mostly because she puts up with all my, crap. Um, I mean, you can see by the number of trumpets just in the picture, that it's just absolutely bizarre that anybody would tolerate that. So she says, we've been together for about 10 years. We've been married for coming up on eight
Wow.
years. So when we first got together, she still comes to all the shows.
Wow.
She loves music and she loves sitting there supporting her husband. And it's just really magnificent. And I don't know a lot of people, after a couple of years, they're like, yeah, go do your little gig. I'll be here knitting or whatever they do. And so I did a lot of big band stuff when she first came on. And she sat there very, very sweetly, smiling with that beautiful smile and looking up at the stage like I was a velvet painting of Elvis. About 3 years in, she said, honey, I love you. And I said, yes. And she said, can I not come to the big band concerts anymore? Because I love it when the big band plays. But when those guys stand up and take a solo for 5 minutes straight, there's not enough coffee in the world to keep me awake for that. And so I just, you can't help but laugh because she's so honest and she's so good. So
Yeah.
she's our demographic, man.
Exactly.
I'm not playing for the other trumpet players, although other trumpet players will really dig the band. Other musicians will really dig the band. But like here in Nashville, like we're going to play on Monday nights. And a friend of mine will play on Tuesday, and another friend will play on Wednesday, and they're all $10 covers. So the guys from Tuesday and Wednesday come in and pay their $10. And then the guy from Monday and Wednesday go to Tuesday, and they pay their $10. And you're just recirculating the same three $10 bills like the magic card tricks. So we're really going to try and improve. Short story is we're going to try and appeal to a real broad base by doing a bunch of different popular tunes and big social media presence. We're going to start recording late November. We're going to do 3 full-length tunes that we're going to break up into 15, 30-second videos and really hit it hard so that we can get 3,000 or 4,000 followers. So when we do our residency in January on a Monday night, 7 o'clock, 75-minute set, that's it.
Yeah.
You pay your money, you have your beer, you go home, right? Because nobody wants to be out until 2 o'clock. Well, nobody I know wants to be out until 2 o'clock in the morning. So 75-minute, real hard-hitting set. And, if we can get 500 people there at $10 a head, it doesn't take long to do the math. So it's really super excited about it, man. It's just it's an all-star lineup of players from here in Nashville, and super excited about it. So that's Vinnie and the Hitmen on Instagram and Facebook, and you can kind of see what we're working on. I've put up several of the charts. We're going to do a Maynard chart.
Cool.
We're going to do a Bill Chase tune because he was rock and roll as you can get, and then really it's kind of all over the map, man. It's really going to be cool. But none of the traditional, like, we're not going to do Earth, Wind, and Fire because they already do that really, really good.
Earth, Wind, and Fire.
What would you change? What would you change about In the Stone? What would you add to In the Stone?
Exactly.
Nothing.
Exactly.
We can't. We're not trying to reinvent the wheel. We're just trying to make the wheel look a little bit different, a little slick from our standpoint. So that's kind of it in a really big, long-winded nutshell.
Well, I was fascinated. No, I'm glad we got there. So while you're taking a break there, we have Mark checking in from Maine. Nathan Samuelson, who's another fabulous player and former podcast guest, checking in from Canada.
Yeah.
And my parents are checking in. So say hi, Mom and Dad.
Nice.
They're viewing.
Hey.
So while we're taking this little break, we already have a few questions that I need to get to, but this is your chance to ask questions of Vinnie Ciesielski. Thousands of recording sessions, live TV, you name it, touring with the world's biggest artists. So this is your chance to ask him directly anything you want to know about trumpet and probably some other stuff. So let me get to the next question. Comes from John in Canada. Vinnie, what kind of mouthpiece are you playing these days?
Oh my gosh, that is an incredibly loaded question. Let me turn around here and I'll show you the collection. So my friend Steve Patrick, who is a really probably the most gifted trumpet player I've ever sat next to, the most naturally gifted trumpet player I've ever sat next to, just a real freak of nature. When he was young, 9 years old, he definitely walked into the magic trumpet closet and came out with a pile of ability. He plays fantastic classical trumpet. He swings like crazy. He can play rock and roll. He blows a little bit. He plays some solos. But this guy has the ability he's got perfect pitch, and whatever he hears or sees, he can play. He's doing some of the movie soundtrack stuff here in town, some of the video game stuff here in town. It's really remarkable. Steve has a mouthpiece company, and I know this is a Bob Reeves brass follow-up podcast.
There's room for everybody. Yeah,
a room for everybody. Steve's got Patrick mouthpieces, and I've been with him since it was loud mouthpieces. Joe Murphy did. They were working with stainless steel, which I understand is like the hardest metal on the face of the planet. And so they moved away from that. Steve has a knack for developing commercial mouthpieces, kind of crossover commercial classical mouthpieces, like a guy could pick up with the same rim diameter and put a little zip on it for the pop stuff, but still be true to his gigantic 1 1/4 C rim. And then he does a classical line. He also does low brass stuff. And the most recent acquisition, and I promised I wouldn't say this, but it's a trombone mouthpiece.
Cool.
It's just bad. So I have my friends out at KHS at Jupiter, the vice president of the company, Jerry Goldenson, and Rick DeYoung, who is a great writer, and he's also kind of the A&R guy. He's like the guy that handles all the goofballs that come in and ask for free stuff. They set me up with a valve trombone, which I then bought from them, and it actually plays in tune, and the low D, it's in B flat. The low D actually speaks on the horn. It's pretty remarkable. I do not use it on recordings or any of that kind of stuff. I play it at the end of the night, and it's kind of soothing. I know that's counterintuitive because it's a trombone, but yeah. So that's the latest. So for my commercial stuff, I play a copy of a Dave Stahl C from 1972. And I'm pretty convinced that somebody took a hand drill, like one of the old ones with the handle and the crank, and drilled out the throat at some point. So I've never asked. I don't want to know what it is, but it's wide and flat. It's super comfortable. Those things are about the size of, I guess, maybe a 3C, but it's basically it's not a nickel with a dent in it, but it's on the shallower side. And then when I'm playing in the studio, when I'm stacking myself, oftentimes we'll get a project where we'll put 3 or 4 trumpet stacks on and 3 sax stacks and 4 trombone stacks. I will switch instruments and switch mouthpieces. So it really widely varies from the Rex Omni 2, which is made by Pickett, which is somewhere between a 1C and a 3C. Big, classical mouthpiece. I do my routine and all that stuff on that, and then I knock over to the commercial stuff. A guy I know looked at him and said, "I've never seen rims this wide or flat." So I'm not sure if that answers it, but that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Awesome. Well, there you go. And actually, we have kind of a follow-up from Mark. He's you talked about the Pickett piece or the Patrick piece. If you had any recommendation for a shallow cup mouthpiece, apparently when Mark plays shallow stuff, he gets his lip splits, which, I don't know, it may not be the mouthpiece, sounds like. Did you ever have any issues with that, playing shallow stuff, or any recommendation?
No, I've never had an issue with that. Mine was, I had the nickel itch. You guys are very familiar with nickel itch, and so there's something in nickel that gets, and it feels like you've taken a piece of sandpaper and rubbed it across your lip, not to where it's bleeding, but just 'cause it's rough and it kind of itches. So I play on all gold-plated stuff. This is what I would do, Mark. This is what I would do. The first thing I would do is when you're going shallow, my belief and what works for me is a pretty flat rim, and then not a real sharp inner bite, but the mouthpiece then goes sort of straight down for a period of time, and then you create the shallowness across the bottom flat part of the mouthpiece. So that way, if you are intruding into the mouthpiece more, and you're vibrating against the bottom of the mouthpiece on a real shallow mouthpiece, that might be what is causing the split. But without seeing you play, Mark, there is no, and listen, what works for me, whew, doesn't work for a lot of people. So, honestly, and not to be too, I don't know what the word is, but these cats that we're talking to right now, John and all the people out of Bob's, I mean, they've been making mouthpieces for a bazillion, 50 years,
53.
50
Yeah.
years,
Well, 53 under Bob Reeves
50.
Brass, and Bob started in the mid 60s, so he's going almost on 60 years.
Yeah,
Yeah.
60 years of experience. I mean, if you tell them, gather together all the mouthpieces that you've tried in the last 2 years and give them the mouthpieces and say, here's what I need and see what they got, man. I mean, the safari continues. If you can find an inexpensive way to do it, I suggest you write a book and tell everybody about it. And then that way you'll be making enough money off the book to buy all the mouthpieces. So it's not, I mean, it's not for the faint of wallet. It's not a cheap or inexpensive proposition, but I really think that there's it's just like girls or boys. Your partner is out there. Your mountain. When I picked up this Dave Stahl, man, it was immediate. It was an immediate improvement, and I've been playing on that mouthpiece since 2003. So it's a
Yeah.
long haul on that mouthpiece. Yeah. So, but I think the swing thing is definitely not. Gosh, I don't know, man. I'm not smart enough. How about you, John? Are you smart enough to figure
Well,
that out?
oh man. Well, I mean, you said that they were great. We're all different, and I mean, what Bob says is fine. It's his to him. It's coming down to finding the rim, which I think what you mentioned. If you get one that's too flat and has that sharp edge, that can create issues for some players. Some players love it. But yeah, Bob's advice is find the rim you love, not the one you like, but the one you love, and then marry it. Keep like you did. You found the mouthpiece you liked and put it on everything. Put it on your flugel mouthpiece. Put it on your lead mouthpiece. And just stick with it. Because yeah, switching rims around and playing on something that feels okay. If you're really putting hours and hours into the horn, you don't want to play something that just feels okay. It's like running a marathon in combat boots, right?
Yeah,
I
and
mean,
and there is enough mouthpieces out there floating around on the market that you could, if you get close, then you can get closer. And if it's a small change, then you call Bob and you say, hey guys, this is what I got. It's one of your mouthpieces, and this is what I'd like. And those cats will fix you up. But there are, you know, I would consider Bob one of the larger, manufacturers. We're not talking about a Bach or a Yamaha size company, but you guys are creating and selling a lot of mouthpieces. There's a lot of little boutiques out there. And honestly, man, a mouthpiece company that's selling 2,000 mouthpieces, trumpet mouthpieces a year, is not taking a chip out of Bob Reeves' bottom line. You know what I mean? Just not. So find your guy. Find somebody. And ultimately, this is a good piece of advice. Find the person that you want to sound like. If you want to sound like Roger Ingram or Wayne Bergeron or Maynard whoever, Doc Severinsen, whoever you want to sound like, find out what he plays. Find the size that's appropriate for you. But I agree with the rim, man. Find that rim because that's where the most contact is. But I'd have to see, like some guys, their physiology is set up so that everything goes forward.
mhm,
Those guys can play high Q flat all day.
yeah.
Steve Patrick, on a good day, could eat an apple through a hole in the fence. His bottom teeth are pointed out forward and his top teeth, everything goes forward. So he's super efficient. I have a trombone player buddy here in Nashville. This kid, when I first moved to town, we were playing in a wedding band together. And I would sit on a high G, as many jackass lead trumpet players do at the end of the song, and I'd hold it and kiss it off. And this kid would be not in the trombone octave, in the trumpet octave, on the same note, hold it longer and kiss it off better. And he was another one of those
Oh,
guys that everything in his face went forward to the mouthpiece. And when he did it, it was effortless. It didn't even look like he was playing. He's such a nice guy, so you can't hate him. I mean, you can hate him a little bit, but not much because it's so nice. So it's just like really
uh,
incredible. So that's what I would do, man. Find somebody you like working with. The cats out there, you call them on the phone or you email them. They're going to get back to you. They know what they're talking about. Tell them where you are, and really pinpoint the safari so that somebody who really knows what they're doing. And when you say this is what happens, they can say it's as a result of this.
Yeah.
That find a professional or find somebody who really knows what they're doing. Because me, if I stick it up there and I can play a high C, yeah, I'm good. You know what I mean? It's whatever. So.
Yeah. Well, thank you for the recommendation, Vinny, and your check's in the mail.
Good.
Yeah, and yeah, it is Wonder of Life, and that's the thing. Like people ask, the one thing I should say is like here at the shop, we don't teach you how to play the trumpet. If someone comes to us with a trumpet question about how to play, we say go to a trumpet teacher. They spend their whole life teaching trumpet, learning how to play trumpet, and in some respects, some trumpet teachers do know about equipment, but I would say most of them really don't know the acoustics like we do. So, but we see hundreds of players a month, several a week, and we work with them. And like you said, we know it works. We've probably seen it before. So anyway, we could talk all day about trumpet mouthpieces. Let's get to some more questions. Before, we do have a lot of people joining in. So for you new viewers checking in, we've gone about a half an hour. You've missed a lot of great stuff. You can go back and review this. You can rewind, and this whole Q&A will be archived on YouTube. So you can share it with your friends, share it with your students. Lots of great advice. And most importantly, we're going another 15, 20 minutes here. So you can ask your questions down in the comments and also show us some love. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, all those things. So back to you, Vinny. This question comes in from Ron, actually as a follow-up to the podcast. And it's a great question because we talked a lot about your extensive studio sessions and stuff. And there's a few terms that you talked about that I didn't follow up on that I think some of our listeners might have been not sure about. One of them, you talked about playing on the card. And then the other one was referring to your master session. So can you talk a little bit about what those are?
Yeah, those two things run congruently. So on the card, when you go into a union session, that is the record company or the movie or the TV, whoever it is, your artist, is what they call signatory with the American Federation of Musicians. Ours is 257. Dave Pomeroy, 2 big thumbs up for Dave. He's a good dude. So for years and years and years and years and years, probably coming up on 100, the upper echelon of the union has been negotiating with record companies to get fair wages. When we do a session on the card, it is under the auspices of a union contract. But that sounds it doesn't sound like something a trumpet player would ever utter out of his face. Oh, yes, the auspices of a contract. So we just say on the card. It's a big yellow card. It's not as big as it used to be. They're making it smaller. I'm thinking that they're probably going to eventually go to digital. You put your name, you put your social security number. There's no room for the address because everything's on file with the union. You put how many sessions you did, if you had a double, and that's where these really cool things come in. So master scale is the highest scale, the highest non-manipulated scale that you can make. It winds up being for a musician, and this is public knowledge. So a union session is 3 hours. In 3 hours, you can record 15 total minutes of music. So, 5 3-minute songs, 3 5-minute songs, whatever. If it's a pop session, you could probably get 4 in and kind of slide it under the rules. Master scale is about $175 an hour all in, and that is if you just play trumpet. So for a 3-hour session, you make it $500. Every session has to have a leader. Sometimes you're lucky enough to get the leader fee. It's not like being a band leader, so I'm good at this one. For no other reason, you just kind of make sure that all the paperwork's taken care of and kind of oversee, and that pays double scale. So instead of making $500, you make $1,000. Now, here's where it gets cool. Really for the woodwind players, if you have a double, which is an instrument that's not your first instrument. So we have a B-flat trumpet. C trumpet doesn't really count. You have a B-flat trumpet. If you play flugelhorn, your first double pays an additional 25%, which is kind of cool. So that would be, what, $1,750? It's about $50. Every double after that, with no limit, pays an extra 20%. So if you've seen these saxophone players on a session with soprano, alto, tenor, bari, flute, clarinet, some of them play oboe, but they don't like to tell anybody because it's hard. God bless you, oboe players. It winds up being a lot of money. We're over here making $175 an hour, and these guys, by having these, they play one note on clarinet. Whee! You know what I mean? And it's like, you just made an extra $40 for that. So it's pretty awesome. In Nashville for a long time, because the flugelhorn is very close to the trumpet. It's not the same, and I think you need to practice the flugelhorn every day. I put about 10 minutes in every day, just so when I stick it on my face, and if you're going back and forth a lot, you know how that can be problematic, man. I mean, it's really kind of tough. We call it the swindle horn. Actually, we didn't call it. Trumpet players didn't call it the swindle horn. Everybody else did, because we've always got it in our case. It doesn't really weigh that much. It's going to be there. But if we play it, even if it's a one note, we get that extra 25%. So I hope that answers the question, man. But that's basically what it is. And look, non-union stuff happens. It just does. The gospel industry is littered with it, and I've made a lot of gospel records. Full half of my catalog is gospel stuff. What I try to do when I'm doing that is one of the cool things about the union is that your employer pays into your pension. And this thing called health and welfare, which is this mystical thing that I don't really know what is. But 11% of what you make goes into pension. And so when we retire, hopefully, we're going to get that money back in a monthly payment. So when I work off the card, which I do, and I'm not going to get in trouble because Tennessee is a right to work state, I try and get the same scale. And I try and what I do with that money is I take a portion of it and put it into my own Roth IRA and my own annuities and my own investments, so that when I get to retirement age, I'll be getting back on that too. So, it's a great organization. They've always treated me fair. They've gotten me money that I would have never gotten in a million years. I did the Tonight Show years ago with Lyle, and it was Jay Leno. It was out in LA, super fun. I was fortunate to do that show 12, 15 times, something like that, with a bunch of different artists. And we didn't get paid for a long time, man. It was a long, long time. Like after 3 months, the guys in the band are like, whoa, what's going on? 6 months later, we get a check. Highly unusual for them. They're usually like 2 weeks right on the money. It just slipped through the cracks. And the union in LA slammed them.
Wow.
And we got... That show pays $350 or $400, $500, whatever it is. We got 5 separate checks for one show. First one was a repeat, and the next 3 were penalties and fines and all that stuff. I think we made $1,200 or $1,500 off the whole show. It was remarkable, and that pays your union dues for 5 years. So it's a great organization. That's what it means to work on the card.
Awesome. And I forget about that, because we do have, well, first of all, I mean, even though it's the American Federation of Musicians, not everyone is in the union, and some people they're amateur players and won't even join the union. They have no need to. But I know that's not also how other countries work. And so, for example, I know in Australia and Tokyo and Japan, even though they have a lot of recording there, there's no union, so their system works a lot differently. So yeah, I'm glad you went through that, because I think it's a nice window on what musicians in America go through, at least.
I mean, real quick, well, here's what's really cool about it, man. Every August 4th, I get now that goes right into my bank account. I get residual payments from the records that I've done on the card. And I don't know how it's figured out, because I'm a trumpet player. 3 buttons is hard for me, but it's somehow it's based on sales, and then they put all the money in a pot, and according to how many sessions you've made, you get your small percentage of it. So guys that are doing a lot of sessions get bigger checks, guys that aren't, so on and so forth. So that's one of the things that the union does, is residual payments. When I work off the card, most of the time I have a handshake deal. We did one last year, a Christmas record, that got picked up by Verizon on a TV commercial. And when he got his first residual check, he then Venmo'd us. I even forget what the figure was, but he shared that residual payment with us. That's not always the case. So the union will protect you. If you feel like you're playing on a big record, listen, man, if Madonna puts out another record and you play trumpet on it, you better get it on the union because you got it on a card because it's gonna sell a lot of records.
Yeah.
And then you're gonna make those nice fat residual checks. So you don't have to be in the union to work under the auspices of a union contract in a right to work state. So it's complicated. If you want to talk about it, just DM me and I'll be glad to direction, man.
Well, and that's a whole side of the music business that they don't teach you, or a lot of places don't teach you in college or in school. Because I know a lot of my friends that have recorded, the demo for a hip hop artist or a pop artist that, maybe they re-recorded the album, but those horn tracks ended up being sampled or used in the platinum, release, and they don't see a penny, and that's those.
Terrible.
It's great to have those protections and know that you can reach out to the union. I do want to get back to some trumpet talk, and I have a few folks checking in. Another former podcast guest, Glenn Appel, who's a good buddy. He's said, "Oh, hey Glenn, hey Vinnie, you hooked him up with the Positive Trumpeters Worldwide after he heard the podcast, and he's got his new T-shirt, so he's wearing that proudly."
Good for him. That's
And
that's awesome.
so, I do want to take a moment for folks just joining us to show us some love in the comments. Let us know where you're viewing from. And we have a few more minutes here so you can get your questions in. I have a few that I need to get to, but we should have time if you want to ask a question of Vinnie Ciesielski. He's here. So, Vinnie, speaking of Positive Trumpeters Worldwide, can you talk a little bit about that, about how you and your colleagues formed it and what it's about and why you think we need it?
Troy Dowling from Canada, from Toronto, the Toronto area. We had been friends for a while online, and he approached me about it. It was his idea. He and Josh Rzepka in Chicago. Josh is a great player. Troy is. Both those guys are incredible human beings and wonderful players. We were talking about. You guys, the trumpet community that frequents online trumpet sites has witnessed the carnage that can go on. Somebody comes on and asks the question again, in a broken English, and it says, what mouthpiece to make high notes? And people just, they just whip them to death, man. It's just awful, and man, this kid, he hasn't been following this site for 10 years. He's not a professional trumpet player, frustrated professional trumpet player, likely. He's just a guy that wants some information. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to create a safe space where people could ask the questions. You know what I mean? How many trumpet players have said, how can I play high? Yeah. What mouthpiece does Bob have to make me play high? Thousands?
How many times today? Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So that question is going to be asked. So Troy said, hey, man, I'm thinking about doing this. I'm stoked, man. That's what he says all the time. I'm stoked, dude. He's just a great cat, man. And the organization, and it's the moderators now are from all over the world, and I think I might have come up with the name Positive. I know I came up with Positive Trumpeters. And then we wanted to do an international thing. It's close to 10,000 people now. You can post anything you want on there. That's not bullying, doesn't have bad language, no politics, no religion. It's all trumpet all the time. There's so many different cool questions on there. I put one up there today about the difference between mental on a trumpet, mental mistakes, and physical mistakes. Physical mistakes, if you're on a session and somebody asks you to go, beep, a 2-octave jump, in 16ths tongue, and you fumble over it a little bit, you can take it back to the practice room and go, you can practice that until you're blue in the face. Then the next time it comes up, you're like, I got this because I played it 10,000 times. Okay. Mental mistakes are often, you're just not paying attention. So a physical mistake for me, like if a trombone player is sitting on I ask him to pick off a high E flat or a high F, right? And they miss it, I'm like, that's a difficult note. That can be a difficult note on the trombone. Same thing with the high register or any kind of technical passage on the trumpet. But if I say, play that high E flat, I want it to be short, put a house top on it, and the guy, first of all, doesn't mark his part, and secondly, plays along, bap, like that, then he's just not paying attention. So I have a lot more tolerance for physical mistakes and a lot less tolerance for mental mistakes. Because when we're in the studio, you got a 5-piece section. Let's go back to the union model. Everybody's making $175 an hour. That's 10, 20, $30 a minute. If we go through a section and it takes 5 minutes and you crack a note and we got to go back and do it, that just cost the producer $200.
Yep.
See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And if you're not paying attention, if I asked you to play a short note on 4 and you play it long, 2 or 3 times in a row, you're wasting everybody's time. That's a good way not to get called again. So I guess the point is, put that on Positive Trumpeters Worldwide today, and it just blew up, man. And people were like, oh, yeah, and giving their opinions, and nobody comes back and says, that's the dumbest thing I ever heard. Everybody's like, yeah, awesome, and so it's super encouraging, really cool place to hang out, man. And there's a lot of great information on it. We do, interviews with like a lot of heavy trumpet players like you guys do. Mm-hmm. It's all archived. You can go on there. Again, as long as it's on the positive side of things, ask away, post away. These people, professionals, putting their releases on there. People, it's just a great place to be. It is the most positive trumpet hang online by leaps and bounds, really. So it's really cool.
It's so awesome. And I have to mention exactly. I mean, before the social media, it was the forums, and I mean, it was like my blood pressure would always rise, because. Well, it's I mean, you gotta love trumpet players, but it's you realize, and you brought this up in the podcast about how really it is a privilege to play the instrument, and you realize these people asking these questions may not have access to other equipment. They may not have access to trumpet teachers. They may not even have access to the Arbenz book, and we're so fortunate that we had teachers and families that supported us and youth bands that playing, or whatever it is for living in America, and that's not always the case. And some players just need to learn how to play high. How do you do it? Well, practice, or don't play on a flugelhorn mouth. Whatever it may be. So that's so awesome. So I got a couple questions because I know we've run about 45 minutes here. So it's so fun having you on here, Vinnie. This is so exciting.
I love it.
Could you talk a little bit? This came in on YouTube. If you could talk a little bit about what your routine is like during the day, and if it changes depending on how hard of playing you have to do that day. If you have several sessions, or you have something that's just you have to go gangbusters.
Shortest answer I could possibly put together. It should only take 2 or 3 hours.
Okay.
I had a long day yesterday. I was down at Fame in Muscle Shoals, Alabama. I'll kick a few names around. If you don't know about Fame in Muscle Shoals, Alabama, they're online. They've got a Netflix documentary. Everybody, but the great Lord Jesus Christ has recorded there. Honest to God, all the Beatles, Elvis, Aretha, Etta James, the Stones, Springsteen. It's ungodly, the list. I mean, that Swampers have played on. So I'm fortunate to go down there. We did 4 songs at East Avalon. We had charts on 3. We did a head chart on 1. Then we jumped in our cars and drove 2 miles down the street to Fame and did 1 head chart for the Fame gang. There's a company that came in and sampled all of the Fame recording studio rooms, all their ISO booths, all their everything, and they're creating. So you can sit in your home studio and say, I want to be in Fame Studio A. Press the button, and you have the ambience or the ambiance and whatever it is of Fame Studio A. And so they needed a song. Wow. So the new Fame gang got together. It's a bunch of young guys that are just playing their tailbones off, and we went in and put a melody over it, and we did a head chart on it. And it was as greasy as your mama's fried chicken on a Sunday afternoon. It was so awesome. I mean, it was incredible. So long day. I got up this morning and did the same routine I did yesterday before I left for Fame. So, whisper tones, lots of flexibility, long tones, Clark Technical Studies, Arbenz, more lip slurs, tonguing section, more flexibility, Tim Hagen's commercial trumpet player. There's 3 sections. I can do it in 25 minutes, or I can expand it and do it in about 2.5 hours, according to how many times I, uh, repeat each section. And if you want to talk about it, DM me. I really don't charge for this crap because I make my money doing other stuff. And if you want to talk about it, I can send you a copy of it. My thing is like with the routine, I think Mr. Adam, I wish I'd have taken from him. I didn't. But it was all about the sound. I have made it through my career, not on theory, not on having lightning fast fingers, not being it's the sound, man. The sound that comes out of the end of my horn just happens to stick. It used to stick to tape. Now it sticks to some sort of ones and zeros in digital land, but it translates really well. It's that sound, if you're a commercial player, that you want to hear. It sounds like, Gary Grant, Jerry Hay, and hopefully Bueno. So I'd be glad to just shoot me a DM. I'd be glad to, sit with you and Zoom and we'll talk and see but if you can get one thing out of my routine that helps you be better, we've all done our jobs here. So that's good.
Awesome.
Anytime.
Do you do any buzzing? Mouthpiece buzzing?
I don't do mouthpiece buzzing. Well, I take that back. The product called the Up Sound?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's like a little duck call.
Mm-hmm.
When I'm in the car, like when I warm up here at the house for about an hour, and then when I'm headed down to Muscle Shoals, which is an hour and a half drive, I play long tones and lip slurs on that thing all the time. So sort of mouthpiece buzzing, but it has more resistance like the horn does. My thing with mouthpiece buzzing is this. I was never able to stay consistent because you hold the mouthpiece so close to the front of your face. I was never able to stay consistent with the angle at which I put the mouthpiece. So about 3 months into my foray into mouthpiece buzzing, I was manipulating things like crazy. Like the horn would be literally going up and down like this. So I shy away from that. But if you're taught properly, my understanding is that can be a really awesome tool in the tool chest to play better. So now my deal is, it's just really just projecting that beautiful trumpet sound that you want to hear. Some people say it's beautiful. Most people say it's a weapon of mass destruction.
Depends on the gig, I guess, right?
Or who's standing in front of me.
Yeah, I mean, you've done a ton of horn section stuff and also horn section writing and arranging. Any advice for, rehearsing a horn section and getting a unique sound out of your section as opposed to just playing the hits,
Yeah, man. If you're writing the charts or whoever's writing the charts, somebody's got to be the leader in the section. So if the saxophone player's the arranger and he's like, nah, man, take it. Make sure that the parts are marked properly. While you're sight reading them, while you're playing them on the gig, and while you're memorizing them. I've had gigs where I've had to memorize the whole book, of a show, and it can be challenging to remember those. So showing up on time, being warmed up, I know that's trite, being warmed up, being ready to go, and being able to play whatever you're asked to play, the first note that you get there and the last note that you get there. Okay, so we're assuming that you're doing all that. Make sure the part, listen. If you like Jerry Hay, find everything that he ever arranged and played on and listen to it all the time. And then that will assimilate itself into your sensibilities as far as section playing goes. When those guys play a short note, I mean, it's like a razor's edge. I mean, it's just remarkable how you can get 4 guys stacked that short. It's incredible. The space that you leave in the music is often what will set you apart as a horn section from anybody else. If you've got a saxophone player, play a short note, thonk. Play it a little shorter, thonk. You have to train your guys. So if you're a lead trumpet player, you have to, in a kind and loving way, which is a challenge, you have to train your guys of what to expect. And then you have to be the most consistent stylistic player in the section. Because if you play it long one time and short the next time, the guy standing next to you, he got a crystal ball when he got married, and it was broken already. So he can't read your mind. He cannot read your mind. So, man, marking those parts. And honestly, when the guys in the section hear the results of you barking at them, now you may want to say, hey, guys, did everybody hear, we're going to play that short note on 4? Boy, it'd really be great. I think it would sound really good. Colossal waste of time. Hey, play that note short on 4. Nothing personal. I mean, sometimes that's got to be the way it is. You know what I mean? I mean, if you're doing a session or if you're doing a TV show or if you're doing a live TV show, oh, Lordy, man, you've got to have it prepped. So the space that you leave, boo-doo-bep-boo-bop, or short and fall, long far, boo-doo-bep-boo-bow. You want a long far, boo-doo-bep-boo-bow. You have to decide what you want, what you think fits the music. Don't be afraid to ask everybody in the section. Saxophone players and trombone players, man, they got opinions and they want to be heard. And if you're having doubts about your interpretation of what's going on, ask them, what do you think? Short, long? Yeah, I don't know. Because, man, sometimes if you just get that different perspective, and then once you got it all lined up, it is repetitive excellence. Just remember that term, repetitive excellence. We were out with man, I can't think of her name. We did a 2-year tour. We did 180 dates in 2 years. And it was basically the same tunes in a different order every night for 2 years. Martina Mcbride.
Yeah.
4-piece horn section. Every night before the gig, we would get together and we would, the Barry would take the root, I'd take the third, trombone would take the fifth, and the saxophone, tenor sax would take the seventh, and we'd play a scale. And we would listen to pitch. Then we would switch voices. And I'll tell you, man, that improved our intonation so much. But once we learned the book, which was after about 2 weeks, any good player can do that, you had to repeat the exact same. None of those people in that audience tonight were there last night. They've never heard this before. That repetitive excellence, that's going to set you apart as a section too. People are going to notice. They really are.
Wow, great advice. That's a cool warm-up with the horn section. Pick a harmonic and go for it. Good. We're almost running out of time. I want to talk about home recording a little bit because I know you do a ton of that, and especially for those of you viewing, check out the podcast. We talk a lot about that, what you were doing during the COVID shutdown and your other business. But if you could just spend a moment talking about what's a good microphone for recording trumpet that you use, and what your setup is, and any advice you could give for any of those home recorders out there.
Well, I think it's budget. It's really, there's a lot of great microphones under $500, but a decent microphone is not inexpensive. So you just got to look at your budget. You can Google best microphones for trumpet under $500 or best microphones for trumpet under $200. Some guys are using USB, blues, and all that kind of stuff. And I would say if you're making a record for Madonna, we'll go back to Madonna. If Madonna comes to you and says, man, I want you to put some trumpet on my record, then you could probably afford to go ahead and spend the money ahead of time. My personal favorite, for a long time, I used the Royer 121, and I still have it around here somewhere. It's in the case. I found it in a guy that bought storage lockers, and he put it on Craigslist Marketplace, and he said, this thing doesn't work. I'll take $600 or $700 for it. I think I paid $700 for it. I sent it back to Royer. They re-ribboned it and gave me a box. I had $850 in the whole thing. It's a $1,500 microphone.
Wow.
Yeah.
Sweet.
So really, really, yeah, super cool. And listen, if it's good enough for Jerry, I mean, if you look at all those pictures, that's what they're recording on. Now, I think he uses something different these days, but that Royer 121, it's a ribbon microphone. It's a beautiful mic. If you can find one, get one. The ultimate budget-friendly, and it's still not cheap, the best microphone I've ever used, period, is sitting right here. It's a guy named Michael Barkley, Barkley Microphones in Northern Ireland. Michael is a bass player, but he's predominantly a trumpet player that does recording in the British Isles, right? His wife is his partner, his wife. I think she's his wife. I'm sorry, Michael. If she's not, she will be after this.
That's right. It's only going out on the internet.
Yeah, that's right. You should get married, honey. His wife is a saxophone player and a vocalist, and he has developed these microphones. He's an incredibly gifted engineer from the ground up. It's a beautiful ribbon microphone. It's very inexpensive. Trent Austin is selling them right now at his shop, Austin Custom Brass. Mm-hmm. He's kind of the American outlet for those things. And I think they're priced at $750 or $850. They're really reasonable. I have put a FET head on mine, which is a little inline amplifier for $100, and I get so much signal, man, it's not even funny. I do not change mic positions. I change nothing about it except horns for stacks. And I lean in when I'm doing a flugelhorn so I don't have to mess with the gain structure. So the Barkley Infinity Generation 2 is the finest recording microphone, and I've played on $60,000 microphones at Blackbird Studio. I love this thing. I wouldn't say that you should use it as a hammer like you would an SM57. You can bang nails in with that thing and it still works.
Yep.
You have to take care of this thing, but by far, really, really a high quality. And Michael, he's one of the best people I know. I mean, seriously, man, when he's awake, if I text him or send a message to him, he's on it. If I have a question about my microphone when I was first setting up the studio, he walked me through it. He sent me a 20-minute private YouTube video teaching me how to use his gear.
Wow.
Salt of the earth, man. Yeah, I know. Right? Crazy. Yeah. So really, really good stuff.
Awesome. And so when you set it up, what's like the distance that you set it up from the bell?
So basically what you want to do is I'm sitting in my chair here. I turn 90 degrees to the left. It's between 24 and 36 inches off the front of the bell. I play straight over the top of it. So I set it up so that my horn, I'm a straight out player, and the top of the microphone is right even with the top of the bell. But the thing that I've done recently is out of PVC pipe, I've made this big 5 foot by 5 foot triangle that sits in front of me, and you hang. I've got a bunch of different blankets, and each blanket sounds different. It's crazy. So I got moving blankets that I put over the top. And so basically what you want to do is you want to deaden the space from the end of the bell to the microphone. And then you want to have some recording room in back of it so that, you can catch the swirlies, as I like to call them. But then you have ultimate control over how much room and then post. Because what happens is I get this, what I think is this big, beautiful trumpet sound. It's real dry. It doesn't have any reverb. It still sounds great. And then once I pass it on, I have to let it go. Let it go. I do, because, man, sometimes I've gotten it back and I'm like, oh my gosh. Sometimes I get it back and it's like, holy cow, that sounds like $1 million. I can't believe that's me. And then other times, equally as many times, I'm like, holy crap, what did they do to my poor trumpet? They compress it and they squeeze it and put all kind of. So get a good clean signal, flat front stems. Anybody who's recording knows what that is, so that they match up. Make sure they're edited properly. Make sure they're crossfaded. Make sure that your producer or your artist doesn't have to do any extra work. All they got to do is throw it in. The ultimate compliment will be, can I borrow your mix? And when it's only happened once, and it happened with a Grammy-winning producer, and I was like, you just could have knocked me off of this chair with a feather. I was like, wait, am I being punked? I really thought he was kidding, but it wound up on the record, man, and it turned out really cool. So that's pretty neat.
So awesome. I like what a masterclass right there in recording. And for those of you viewing, because people joining in even after an hour, you can go back and check out this whole live stream and check out the podcast with Vinnie, because we talked a lot about recording, like I had mentioned, and your home recording setup and all that stuff. I can't believe we've gone over an hour, Vinnie. This has been so much fun. I feel like we could do this all day.
I'm so sorry. I talk so much. I'm so sorry.
Oh, no.
That's why I'm a good trumpet player. I stick the horn in my face, and then I don't talk. So people are like, play some more. Play. So.
I love it. I'm going to leave you with one last question. If you could leave us with some parting advice, about trumpet. It doesn't have to be your best piece of advice that you talked about on the podcast, but just, something you can leave our viewers with.
As far as the trumpet and as far as commercial music, I can't speak with great authority on classical music. I love listening. I love listening to my friend Jeff Bailey, who was the principal trumpet player with Nashville forever and ever and ever, and just one of the finest, most world-class, and probably overlooked players. He was, he would play traditional C trumpet stuff on E flat with a slightly smaller and just still get a sound that would make your eyes pop out of your head. Just beautiful. I can't really speak to great jazz. Playing great jazz, Matt White, my friend over at the University of South Carolina, SEC, go Gamecocks. He's a commercial player and a jazz player and makes his living as a teacher and a jazz player. It's really remarkable, and that guy can play changes like I've never heard anybody in my life. I can, however, speak to commercial and pop and R&B and rock and roll trumpet playing. And the most important thing is sound. Sound, sound, sound. I found my guys pretty early on, and I didn't even realize it. When I was 9 years old, I heard Alive Again by Chicago for the first time, and I had just started playing trumpet, and I was riding the short bus to school. Long story. And I said, wow, that's a trumpet. I wonder how they do that. And I picked up, my dad had a cassette recorder, and I did too. And I started doing overdubs. I would play it, the first line of a duet, then I would play it, and I would play along with it and record it on the second one. And then, so when I was 9 years old, I was doing like 6 tracks of trumpets. I'm like, yeah, I like the way this sounds, man.
Awesome.
So, yeah, show up, play, and sound, sound, sound. Everything else, sound and feel. Oh gosh, John, the feel. When a record leaves my place, man, I will not let it out of the digital door until it touches something in my soul. And that's usually the way it feels. When a band really swings, or when a trumpet section plays fanfare and you're like, oh my God, I've never heard anything so in tune in my life. All of that stuff, or a singer really gets it, or you hear a guitar solo, whatever the deal, that feeling that you get, that's really important too. Everything else can be fixed. Pitch can be fixed. Sight reading you can practice. Pitch you can practice with a drone and a tuner, and you can play in tune once you learn the parameters of your chops and your horn. Feel and sound. That's my best word of advice.
Love
and
it.
Again, if you want to talk about it, you're welcome to DM me or get in touch with me somehow. Send a carrier pigeon. I love talking stuff, as you can tell, way too much.
Oh man, it's been so much fun. So trumpetvinnie.com is your website, and then your social media. Instagram is probably you use the most, right? Is that best place for folks to find you?
It's Instagram migrates down to Facebook, but yeah, Trumpet Vinnie, and then Vinnie and the Hitman will be part of the Trumpet Vinnie website coming up. My buddy Gregg Prosser out in Western Canada, like he lives, I'm not sure where he lives, but it's like 8 hours north of Vancouver. I thought the Earth stopped there. But he's a principal trumpet player with the orchestra out there, and he's a web designer, and he's helping me out. So all that stuff, and the trumpet and the Vinnie and the Hitman stuff is coming soon, man. And when you see that over on Positive Trumpeters Worldwide, it's going to make your eyes pop out of your head. You will not believe the sound of this band. It's phenomenal. Oh my gosh.
Can't wait. So we'll have to check in when your first charts are out. That's going to be we're looking forward to it. Vinnie, what fun, man. But we'll have to, like I said, we'll have to do this again. Thank you so much for spending your afternoon with us.
Thanks, John. I appreciate you, man. See you, everybody.
And thank you for joining us. It was so cool. We had folks checking in from all the way from Tasmania over to the UK, and covered pretty much most of North America, and talked all kinds of different things about trumpet and recording and life. So awesome having Vinnie on here. And just as a reminder, we had another over an hour podcast with Vinnie Ciesielski on the Other Side of the Bell Trumpet podcast. You can find it on all of those places: Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and streaming online on our website at bobreeves.com. There's a lot we didn't cover in this Q&A that you don't want to miss out from the podcast. A lot of great life advice, talking about Vinnie's teachers and why Vinnie's just one of the most positive people I know in the world, and such an inspiration. So go check out episode 93. Coming up next on the podcast is another fabulous artist, Mary Elizabeth Bowden. great soloist out of the East Coast. She has a few albums out. She tours around, and she's coming up with a great project, commissioning all new works for trumpet. So that podcast will be dropping here in the next week or two. So check out for that. Check out the podcast for that. Coming up soon on the Q&A is going to be Hollywood studio trumpet legend Rick Baptist. I don't have the exact date yet. We're working on that, but he's going to be doing a Q&A in the near future, which means you're going to want to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on the Facebook page so you don't miss these Q&As, because they sure are a lot of fun and a lot of great information. So that's it for now. A huge thank you to Vinnie Ciesielski, and we'll see you next time. Stay safe, be healthy, and let's go out and practice now, shall we? Bye-bye.